Imagine for a second that you walk into a house you've never been to before.
Okay.
You open the front door, and the thermostat is set to your preferred temperature, like down to the exact decimal point.
Oh, wow.
Right. And your favorite, I don't know, obscure jazz album is playing softly in the background.
That's nice.
It is. And then in the kitchen, there's a meal with your exact daily nutritional requirements. Just, sitting on the counter, perfectly warm.
Okay. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself a question at that moment. Did the universe just randomly assemble this perfect environment through sheer astronomical coincidence?
Or did someone know you were coming?
Exactly.
Yeah, when our environment fits us that flawlessly, our brains naturally start looking for the architect. I mean, the idea of a happy random accident just feels, well, fundamentally inadequate when you're faced with that kind of hyper-specific design.
And that feeling, that unavoidable search for an architect, is really the entire foundation of what we are unpacking today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
We've got a fascinating one today.
We really do. You, our listener, are our resident learner, the kind of person who loves a profound thought experiment. And we have a highly unconventional stack of notes to go through specifically for you today.
Yeah, unconventional is a good word for it.
We are examining excerpts from a translated text by an author named Xufeng. The title is, There is a Supernatural Soul in the Universe, 40 Evidence Proving the Existence of the Greatest Creator.
It's a bold title.
Extremely bold. Our mission today is to explore the incredibly specific way this author uses, like scientific measurements, planetary orbits, and atmospheric data, to argue that the universe is meticulously engineered for human life.
But before we jump into those specific measurements, I do need to make the parameters of our discussion very clear.
Right, the disclaimer.
Yeah, it's important. Because this text involves direct theological claims about a supernatural creator, we are operating with absolute impartiality today.
100%.
We are not endorsing these viewpoints, taking sides, or trying to, validate the theology. Our goal is simply to impartially report on the unique ideas and the internal logical framework contained within this original source material.
Right.
We're examining it purely as an intellectual thought experiment.
Exactly. So the core premise of Xufeng's argument actually begins before we even look up at the stars. The text argues that if we just stop for a second, calm our minds, and actually observe our surroundings, we can intuitively sense a supernatural power at work.
A power that dictates basically everything. The movement of the universe, the birth and death of all matter, and even human fate itself.
Yeah, and the author takes a really strong stance on fate, right?
He does. He argues that while nobody can deny fate, nobody can truly grasp their own state either. We are essentially passengers moving along heavily managed, assigned life courses.
So we're just along for the ride.
Pretty much. And to even begin to study this, to break out of that limited passenger mindset, Xufeng promotes entering a space of study called Lifechanyuan.
But this isn't just a physical classroom, though, right? It's framed as a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah, it is a profound mental pivot. The text claims that by engaging with Lifechanyuan, a new life begins, your spirituality expands, and your thinking sort of transcends standard human limitations and traditional ethics.
Wow.
You stop viewing the world through the narrow lens of just, daily survival, and you start seeing the ultimate macro design.
And when the text says macro design, it means the absolute largest scale conceivable.
Oh, absolutely.
To understand this supernatural management, Xufeng points us outward to the entire solar system.
We're zooming way out.
Way out. The author looks at the vast distances between celestial bodies, their massive sizes, their incredible speeds, and claims, basically, that none of it is a product of random physics.
Not a single bit of it.
Right. It is a meticulous, deliberate arrangement governed by strict laws designed for one primary purpose.
The survival of Earth.
Exactly. The survival of Earth.
The text actually provides a very specific roster of these bodies. Mercury, Venus, Mars, the asteroid clusters, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
The classic lineup.
Right. Now, in standard astronomy, we might view these as independent worlds, right, with their own complex histories.
Sure.
But for Xufeng, they are explicitly categorized as additional bodies or appurtenances of the Earth.
So they aren't independent worlds at all in this framework.
No.
They're essentially a cosmic VIP bodyguard detail.
That's a great way to put it.
Like Earth is the VIP, and every single planet, every rock in an asteroid cluster is holding the line, taking a bullet, maintaining a gravitational shield.
And the author is uncompromising on this point. If you
Yeah.
were to remove any of these heavenly bodies, or even like slightly alter the factors of their
Like
existence,
their mass or speed?
exactly, their mass, their speed. If you change that, the Earth's orbit would destabilize and human survival would immediately end.
Wow.
And because of this radically Earth-centric design, the text concludes that life absolutely only exists on Earth.
No aliens.
No aliens. There is no possibility of life on other planets because their solitary function is to serve as a mechanical support system for us.
Wait, okay. If the entire solar system is just a mechanical support system for Earth, what does the author think about modern astronomy?
Oh, he has thoughts.
Because if there's no life out there, and it's all just a rigid machine built for us, aren't astronomers just sort of wasting their time looking through telescopes?
Well, the text actually addresses that head on. Shufeng writes that astronomers building space telescopes and observing the cosmos day and night is just a, quote, tiring task.
A tiring task.
Yeah,
He's entirely dismissing the scientific method of observation.
pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, how can you possibly understand the cosmos without observing it?
Through pure deductive reasoning.
Deductive reasoning.
Yeah, the text argues that starting only from mankind's basic necessities for survival, we could theoretically calculate the required masses of the Earth, the Moon, and the other celestial bodies.
You're kidding.
Nope. We could mathematically deduce their necessary orbits and speeds. The author claims we wouldn't even need to look up at the sky to know what lies beyond Pluto or whether Uranus has satellites.
That is an incredible leap. Working backward from human survival needs to accurately map the physical cosmos.
It's a huge claim.
How does the author justify that? I mean, how do you deduce the moons of Uranus from the fact that I need to, like, eat breakfast and breathe air?
Well, this gets to the very core of Feng's logical framework. The author justifies this extreme deductive reasoning by assuming the universe operates on a principle of perfect administrative efficiency.
Perfect efficiency.
Right. There are no superfluous galaxies. There are no useless celestial bodies. Every single atom has a distinct function.
The universe as a supreme cosmic bureaucracy.
Exactly. And to illustrate this perfect logic, the author uses a very grounded municipal analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine you are visiting a highly democratic, highly developed country. As you walk around, you notice the streets are flawlessly clean and tidy.
Sounds lovely.
Right. And from that observation alone, you can immediately infer the existence of a highly efficient urban sanitation organization.
Sure.
You don't need to read the city charter or interview the mayor, right? The clean street is the absolute proof of the management structure.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. You see a result, you infer the process.
But Shefeng takes it much further with what we can call the dustman or street sweeper analogy.
Okay.
The text argues that if you know the physical size of this city, its total population, and the general living standard, you can mathematically calculate the exact number of dustmen required to keep it clean.
You can just math it out.
Right. You do not need to walk the streets counting them one by one.
Because a perfectly efficient system wouldn't hire an excess of workers, and it wouldn't hire too few.
Precisely. The calculation dictates reality.
Wow.
And Xuefeng adds a fascinating caveat to this analogy. Say you did go out and count every single dustman, and your final tally was exactly one more than your mathematical calculation.
Okay, so the math was wrong.
No, the text argues that doesn't disprove the logic. That single extra person is merely a temporary replacement, accounted for by the management to handle unforeseen circumstances.
Oh, wow.
The system remains perfectly rationally managed.
I mean, this feels incredibly anthropomorphic.
It does.
The author's taking a supernatural intelligence and placing it inside the confines of human bureaucratic logic. It assumes the vast, chaotic, violent cosmos runs like a municipal government's zoning department.
Yeah, a cosmic zoning department.
Does the author really believe the universe operates like a city planner's spreadsheet? Or is that just the only way a human brain can process infinite complexity? Like, we build cities, so we assume the creator manages a cosmic city.
It is a deeply human-centric view, projecting our administrative ideals onto the void of space. But, for Shifeng, the logic flows the other way.
What do you mean?
The order we value in our most developed societies isn't an arbitrary human invention. It is a pale reflection of the ultimate supernatural order of the universe. So, the efficiency of a clean street is a microscopic echo of the efficiency of planetary orbits.
Okay, well, if the planets are the macro design, the massive, blunt force zoning laws protecting the Earth from the vacuum of space, how does this cosmic manager handle the fragile, granular details of life on the ground?
That's the next level down.
Right. Because a planet can take a meteor impact, but human lungs can't survive a slight temperature drop.
And to answer that, the text transitions from the vastness of the solar system down to what the author calls the skin of the
The
Earth.
skin of the Earth,
Yeah.
which is our atmosphere.
Yes.
And the text provides incredibly specific metrics for this skin. The atmosphere technically occupies the space from sea level up to 1,000 kilometers above it.
Right.
But the crucial detail is the density. 99% of the entire atmosphere is concentrated within just the first 40 kilometers from the surface.
Just think about the scale of the Earth for a second. It's a globe roughly 12,700 kilometers in diameter, and it's wrapped in a vital layer that is practically paper thin.
It's a razor-thin margin. And the text breaks down the atmospheric divisions based on altitude and chemical components. Right. You have the troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, ionosphere, and exosphere.
But the author's primary focus is the troposphere.
Right. And this is the range extending only about 18 kilometers above sea level.
That 18-kilometer slice is where the vast majority of the action happens.
According to Shufeng, 99% of the planet's vapor is in this troposphere.
Yes.
This tiny sliver is the engine room for all climatic changes. Thunder, lightning, wind, rain, drifting clouds, the glow of the evening sky, rainbows.
Every piece of weather we experience happens right there.
And the author frames this 18-kilometer troposphere as an absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for our existence.
Yes, the text states bluntly that without this highly specific skin, the Earth would be as barren, bleak, and desolate as the Moon or Mars.
Just a dead rock.
Exactly. It is the only thing standing between us and an immediate freezing void.
It acts like a highly specialized biodome, or even better, a master baker's precise recipe.
A recipe is a good analogy.
Right. If you bake a cake, you can't just throw handfuls of flour and baking soda into a pan and expect a dessert. The ratios have to be exact, down to the gram.
And that leads us to the author's most detailed argument for fine-tuning: the chemical recipe of the very gases we breathe.
What's the breakdown?
Well, the text breaks down the atmosphere's composition to demonstrate this precision. It's 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and less than 1% of other gases like carbon dioxide, argon, and ozone.
Okay.
And Zuofeng explores exactly what happens to the human biodome if we alter these ingredients by even a microscopic fraction.
Let's start with oxygen, 21%. The text argues this specific proportion is perfectly balanced, and any deviation up or down triggers catastrophe.
If the oxygen level drops below 21%, it severely hinders normal activities or causes death.
Right.
The text uses the summit of Mount Everest as a practical example, where the scarcity of oxygen makes normal human function impossible. Or, the necessity for astronauts to carry precise oxygen supplies into space.
I mean, that makes total sense to us. We know we need oxygen to survive. But the text explores the inverse, which is a truly terrifying concept.
It really is.
What happens if we have more than 21% oxygen?
The author claims that a higher atmospheric oxygen content would be globally destructive.
Like, how so?
People and animals in low-latitude regions might suffer from oxygen poisoning. And more dramatically, the text argues that inflammables in nature would become dangerously volatile.
Volatile.
Yeah, Shufeng writes that with higher oxygen, quote, an iota of spark may trigger many things ablaze.
Think about the implications of that. A single spark setting the world ablaze at 22% oxygen.
It's wild.
The mundane act of lighting a match or a rock striking another rock could spontaneously ignite a forest.
Exactly.
We are perpetually balancing on a 1% margin between suffocating and bursting into flames.
It's a very dramatic way to look at it, but that's the argument.
Okay, so what about the nitrogen? It makes up the vast majority of the air, 78%. Why such a massive amount?
Well, according to the text, the 78% nitrogen requirement is entirely about the survival of plant life.
Plants.
Yeah, plants require a massive amount of nitrogen oxide for growth. Schweffing argues that if the nitrogen content were any less than 78%, the natural mechanisms of the Earth would fail to feed the flora.
Oh, wow.
It wouldn't matter how often thunder and lightning occurred. The atmospheric reactions simply wouldn't generate enough nitrogen oxide for surface plants to absorb.
So lightning acts as a giant atmospheric fertilizer plant, but it only works because the raw materials are stocked at exactly 78%.
That is the author's precise mechanism. The weather events in the troposphere interact with the specific chemical recipe to sustain life.
Which brings us to the final, incredibly delicate piece of the recipe, carbon dioxide. It counts for less than 1% of the atmosphere.
And despite its tiny volume, this trace amount is identified as the core engine of the greenhouse effect.
Okay.
The author states that this exact fractional amount of carbon dioxide is responsible for maintaining the global temperature within a survivable window,
Which is,
between negative 21 degrees and 14 degrees Celsius.
and the margins of error here are even more unforgiving than the oxygen, right?
Absolutely. Without that microscopic fraction of carbon dioxide, the text claims the oceans would entirely freeze up and all plant life would die out.
Just frozen solid.
Yep. And conversely, if there were slightly too much of it, humans and animals would die of poisoning, and the Earth's temperature would skyrocket.
I have to pause here because looking at this 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, and trace carbon dioxide recipe, it raises a massive philosophical conflict.
Right, the fine-tuning debate.
Yeah, the author is looking at this incredibly tight set of parameters and saying, look at how perfectly this environment was mixed specifically for us. But modern evolutionary science looks at the exact same data and draws the complete opposite conclusion.
Yes, the classic chicken or egg scenario.
Exactly. Evolutionary theory argues that life adapted to the atmosphere, not the other way around. We thrive at 21% oxygen because our ancestors evolved in an environment that happened to have 21% oxygen. If the atmosphere had been, say, 15% oxygen, life might have just evolved a different kind of respiratory system.
Sure.
How does the text counter the idea that we are just a puddle marveling at how perfectly the hole in the ground fits our shape?
Well, Shifeng fundamentally rejects the concept of random adaptation.
Entirely.
For the author, the idea that life merely adapted to chaotic, random environmental conditions is illogical because the interdependent precision of the entire system is too absolute.
Okay.
To counter the idea of natural, unguided formation, the text poses a series of rhetorical questions designed to challenge our basic assumptions about complexity.
What kind of questions does he use to dismantle the idea of natural adaptation?
He uses highly practical, engineered examples. The author asks, does an airplane weighing dozens of tons fly naturally in the sky without a designer and an engineer?
I mean, no.
Right. Can a child grow up naturally after birth without the deliberate, careful attention of parents? Is the electrical lighting we rely on generated naturally by the environment?
No.
Can we reap a bumper harvest just by throwing seeds on the ground without naturally hoeing the weeds, applying fertilizer, and watering the soil?
So he is directly equating the complex biological and atmospheric systems of the Earth to farming or engineering a massive jetliner.
Yes. The synthesis of Swifeng's entire argument is that in the known universe, absolutely nothing happens naturally or spontaneously. Nothing. Behind every complex system, whether it is an airplane or the troposphere, there is deliberate management. Everything is managed by what the author terms a person or an intelligence.
Let's pull all of this together.
Let's do it.
We started this deep dive way out in the freezing void of space. We looked at the solar system not as a random collection of floating rocks, but as a heavily engineered VIP bodyguard detail.
Right, where planets like Jupiter act as massive shields designed specifically to protect the Earth's orbit.
We examined the author's underlying logic of cosmic administration. The assumption that perfect efficiency in the universe implies a supreme intelligence.
Much like flawlessly clean city streets mathematically imply an efficient municipal sanitation department.
Exactly. We zoomed down from those massive planetary zoning laws into the Earth's fragile skin, that 18-kilometer thick troposphere. We unpacked the exact baker's recipe of our air.
The 78% nitrogen feeding the plants through lightning strikes.
The 21% oxygen keeping us perfectly balanced between suffocation and spontaneous combustion.
And that tiny fraction of carbon dioxide acting as the global thermostat.
And Swifeng's absolute, uncompromising conclusion from all of this data is that the margins for our survival are so incredibly thin, it is mathematically and logically impossible for it to be an unguided evolutionary accident.
The complexity requires an architect.
It is a perspective that fundamentally alters how you interact with your environment.
It really does. Whether you agree with the theological conclusions of this text or remain highly skeptical, it forces you to look at the mundane details of your life with fresh eyes.
Yeah, the next time you take a breath of air, or spot Jupiter in the night sky, or see a rainbow forming in the vapor of the troposphere, well, the text challenges you to recognize the razor-thin mathematical margins of your own daily survival.
It makes you hyper-aware of the precariousness of every single moment.
It really does. But as we wrap up this thought experiment, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative concept to mull over. It builds on this exact source material, but it comes from the realm of modern astrophysics.
Oh, this is a good one.
It's a concept called the anthropic principle.
Yes. The anthropic principle is one of the most fascinating philosophical responses to this exact debate over fine-tuning.
The principle basically states that the universe must possess these exact, seemingly fine-tuned properties: the 21% oxygen, the specific planetary orbits, the carbon dioxide thermostat, because if it didn't possess them, we simply wouldn't be here to observe it.
Exactly. It argues that out of an infinite number of possible universes, or an infinite expanse of dead space, we can logically only exist in the one specific pocket that supports life.
Right.
Therefore, the fact that our universe appears perfectly tuned for us isn't necessarily proof of a meticulous designer. It is simply a mandatory prerequisite for our existence.
We are only here to ask the question because the physical conditions randomly allowed us to evolve to the point of asking the question.
Precisely.
Think back to that metaphor we started with at the very beginning. You walk into that unfamiliar house, and absolutely everything, the decimal point on the thermostat, the obscure jazz music, the perfectly nutritious meal, is flawlessly tailored to your specific needs.
Yeah.
Does the breathtaking perfection of that house prove there is a master architect who laid it all out deliberately for your arrival?
Or does it merely prove that out of a billion random, chaotic, empty houses in the universe, you are simply the incredibly lucky observer who happened to wander into the one that fit?
It is the ultimate question of intentional design versus astronomical chance. Keep pondering that as you look up at the sky, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.